But when it comes to Nepal, you got to wonder, this is unbelievable. 1 in 200 chance of having an aftershock above a 7.0, and they get a 7.3. Aftershocks will continue. We'll continue to monitor it for you.
That's a sizable earthquake in and of itself, let alone following on from the other one. Tom, appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Let's turn now to the rescue and aid effort. Dr. Helene Gayle is the president and CEO of the International Humanitarian Relief Agency, and she comes to us from CNN, Washington. Thanks very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Can you give us a sense of how the children are doing in and around Kathmandu? Obviously, they're without school. I understand that about 1 million children were due to go back to some sort of formal lessons this week, but given the most recent quake, that's not going to happen. How are they coping?
Well, it's very difficult for children and for their families. People's lives, some people's lives were starting to get back a little bit back to normal, but this second earthquake, or the aftershock, as he described it, has just really gone back, and in some places where houses were still standing, they're now leveled. So families and children are really in very desperate situations. And the very serious monsoon season is about to start. So people are going to be without shelter, facing monsoons on top of this already disastrous situation. So we're very, very concerned about families and just making sure that they get basic needs in the midst of this incredible, devastating disaster.
I suppose if there's a bright spot at all, Doctor, it's that aid and medical teams are already there after the first quake. The difficulty is going to be still getting to some of these places that still haven't had aid from that first earthquake, and now you've got more landslides, more difficulty of getting outside major population centres, right?
That's exactly right. And even though we care and organizations like ours, we're on the ground already, it's now even more difficult to get to these places where the infrastructure has been totally destroyed. So we're sending in supplies by helicopters, but it's even difficult with helicopters getting aid to some of these very, very remote places where the infrastructure is just totally wiped out. We're not getting signals, we can't get communication, and so this is a very, very difficult emergency to respond to.
What aid is most needed at the moment? I imagine more tents, water, food, medical supplies. Is that what you're looking to get in at the moment?
Yeah, those are the kinds of things. Shelter, first and foremost, and particularly, as I mentioned, with monsoons coming, but then water, because water infrastructure has collapsed and people are now lacking access to clean and safe drinking water, and food, as well as medical supplies. There's thousands of women who are pregnant and who will need to have deliveries in the process of this. People forget about the needs of pregnant women in situations like this. So we're also making sure that we get out things like safe birthing kits so that women can deliver babies as safely as possible, even in these difficult circumstances.
Dr. Helene Gayle, President and CEO of CARE, appreciated it. CARE, one of those agencies that was there before that first earthquake, because this is a country that's been in need for a long time. World Food Program's been feeding hundreds of thousands of children there already. Doctor, our thanks to you. I want to go now to Will Ripley. He is live for us in Kathmandu. We had Tom Sater on earlier. Will, we spoke to you last hour, and you just had I think it was a 4.1 or 4.2 magnitude aftershock. You've just had a 5.2, according to Tom Sater. What, you felt that, I imagine?
Here in Kathmandu, we didn't feel the 5.2, and that may be because it wasn't, the epicenter may not have been directly underneath the city like the 4.2 that we felt earlier. But yeah, even though that was a much smaller earthquake than the 7.3, which turned this 5-story building into the pile that you see behind me, it was still very jolting. The buildings shook. You could hear dogs in the neighborhood howling. People ran outside, and many of them still haven't gone back into their homes. There's a family down the street here that's choosing to spend the night in their car. Others are sleeping in a shed, and yet others in tents or even out in the open. They're just too terrified to go back in their homes. People here have been living with these repeated aftershocks, something like more than 140 since that big quake on April 25th, and at least four, now possibly 5 just today. So it really does continue to scare people here, and for good reason when you look at the damage.
We saw some incredible pictures earlier of a big avalanche caused by this second biggest quake. I imagine that avalanches and landslides must be a big worry at the moment for people sleeping out on the streets and in the fields there.
A very big worry, Linda, and it's only going to get worse, the situation when you're talking about landslides, because the monsoon season is approaching. It's just weeks away, and this part of the world will see very heavy rains consistently for an extended period of time. And so you have mudslides, you have the potential for debris to be impacted by all of that, and then the question of where are these families that are essentially living outside, where are they going to go when temporary shelters haven't even been built yet for them?
All right, we'll appreciate that. Will Ripley, so much of concern there already. You've got the monsoon rains coming. That brings its own threat of disease and the like. We'll check in with you later, very late, or there where you are, or very early, depending on your point of view. Will Ripley. And a lot of people want to help out the earthquake victims, and there are ways to do it.
CNN's Impact Your World site has many ways you can help out. You can learn more by going to our website, cnn.com/impact.